speakers and the order in which they were there on the stage with Tim, were discussing sort of different possibilities. And the moment I knew that Ela was going to be here, I was like, wow, it would be great to have her straight after Gabbo. And why did I think that? Differently to most what people would like to believe, Ela's work is actually very connected to what Gabbo does. And I'd like to read this quote by my friend James George. Through the act of listening, one is able to enter the consciousness of other people. If we don't listen, we won't know how to create shared realities. Ela's work is very much about listening, and consistently, in the many conferences that I've been to, her insights prove to be some of the most valuable in understanding what virtual reality could bring us as a part of experience. Please come.
Hey, there we go. Excellent. My name is Ela Darling, and I am a pornographer in virtual reality. I have been making virtual reality adult content for about 2.5 years now. And what I'm focusing on right now is live streaming, so live webcams in VR. My company was actually the first to make a live VR webcam platform, and I'm the world's first VR cam girl. And I have learned a lot about the value of virtual reality with regards to pornography. So I started doing this about 2.5 years ago. There was maybe one other VR porn company at the time. And my business partner and I started off by doing 180-degree 3D pre-recorded videos. And then we tried doing 360 3D videos. And it was clearly a fun experience watching porn in virtual reality, but the true value was that you felt a sense of connection to the person that you were watching in a way that didn't really translate to a traditional 2D analog. So we dug a little bit deeper, and we tried to build that connection and foster connection more. So we made virtual reality holograms, and then we used that technology to make a dating simulator for virtual reality. So you can date me in VR, and it's a pre-recorded game, basically, where you choose responses based on the person in front of you's response, and they'll respond to you. So if you're too forward, too fast, if you say something very sexual initially, that holographic VR person will leave you and ditch you and has no time for that nonsense. And it was really cool, because this experience made it feel like you were really talking to a person, even though this was all pre-recorded content. So we decided, why not take it a step further and make it so you can actually talk to real people in virtual reality. And so we made the webcam platform. And when we did it thinking that we were creating this new interactive kind of porn in virtual reality, similar to webcams in general. And what we discovered was that the sex aspect of it is actually quite secondary. And the primary value is making somebody feel heard, making somebody feel like they're connecting with a real person in space, making them feel a sense of reciprocal intimacy and vulnerability. So there are a few things that I've noticed. I've been a webcam performer for 7 years. I've been a porn performer for 7 years. And the differences in 2D regular camming and VR webcamming is vast. The people who interact with you in virtual reality treat you with a greater sense of personhood than they do when they're just watching them on their computer. I found that no matter where you are on the internet, there's going to be someone who's kind of an asshole. There are a lot fewer assholes in VR camping. And there's a sort of community, there's a sense of community policing almost, where if somebody does come into virtual reality and starts being a jerk, the other people in the room will actually tell them to stop and call their actions out for being rude, which is not something you typically see in a regular 2D webcam. And it's because these people feel a connectedness with you. We have created our own camera and a stitching system, so it takes a 3D 360 panosphere, it immediately stitches everything together, and then we broadcast a live video on top of that. So when you walk into my camera room, you feel like you are actually in my bedroom. You look around, you see nerdy posters on the wall, you see weird skulls on the shelf, because I am basically a teenage goth girl inside, and you really feel like you're there. You feel like you're in your home with me. And like you would do if you were in my home, you tend to have a little bit more reverence for the space and for the people that you're with and that you see. Virtual reality webcamming, I believe, is a strong part of the future for pornography in general. There has been a trend over the past 10 or so years in porn, where we are in a time where people find it audacious to pay for porn. Porn is ubiquitous on the internet. You can find torrents, you can find downloads, you can find tube sites that will stream any kind of porn you can think of. So people don't pay for porn anymore. And as a result, porn has suffered. The people in the porn industry make a lot less money than they used to. Back in the golden age of porn, you could make like $10,000 or more dollars a month very reliably. And now it's very much a middle-class job. There are more performers fighting for fewer jobs, and the jobs pay less. Somewhere around 30 to 40% less than they did just 7 years ago when I first started doing porn. And that's a pretty big drop for a community that really doesn't have much else they can do. Because once you're in porn, you have always been in porn. I'm never going to be a kindergarten teacher. I'm probably not going to run for public office. Porn closes a lot of doors for you. So the diminishing ability to find sustaining work as an adult performer is actually kind of scary for a lot of people because their options are pretty limited. And with virtual reality, we've created a place and a space where people are actually willing to pay for porn again. They're willing to pay for these experiences. And that was especially true when VR porn was first coming out. But as with porn of the past, people have found a way to download it and steal it and have stopped paying for it on the same level as they did when it was first starting. So that's the regular porn industry. Now, comparing that to the live cam industry, live cams have remained relatively lucrative. They haven't taken the same dip that regular porn has. And this is because of what live cams offer you. It's an immediate conversation, and you can't pirate a conversation. You can't pirate a personal lived experience, and that's what live camming offers. Live camming also offers a sense of therapy. When people come into my camera, they are often seeking something that they don't even realize they're seeking. So I have one cam client who I've been working with for years at this point. And when he first started talking to me, when he first started camming with me, he thought that what he wanted was to see pictures of my feet. What he actually was seeking was validation, that his sexual proclivities were okay, and that he could still be a lovable person and have value as a partner and as someone who is trying to live in the world seeking women. He felt like he was a broken person. He thought there was something wrong with him. When actually he has one of the most common sexual interests amongst all men. Feet, I think, they're in the top 5 of all fetishes. So when he came to me, he didn't realize that what he was seeking was a form of sexual therapy, and this is what live cams offer. Now, when you have that in a frame, on a screen, you get a sense of connection, but when you have that in virtual reality, that connection is exponentially stronger. There's a vast amount of opportunity in the future for performers in VR that has been lost over the past several years. Another thing that my company is working on is creating a marketplace for performers to sell pre-recorded content. Now, I think VR live cams offer a lot to both the consumer and the performer. But I'd like to examine another trend in porn. In the past 10 or 15 years, there's been a shift of power. Previously, performers were simply performers. You go to set, you perform, you take your check, you go home. The big money was being made by studios because the studios would create the content and they would profit off of it in perpetuity. Whereas for performers, it was really a one-day, you go, you get paid, and that's it, and you don't know where your next check is coming from. With the advent of sites like Clips for Sale, which is a site where you can go and upload your own self-shot content and sell it to people, we found a huge trend in niche content, where people are not really paying for traditional, regular porn. People still very much pay for specific fetish porn. There are videos that there are categories on this site that you can think of that you would never think of, like balloon popping. That's a fetish. So we have seen that over the past several years with sites like this, anybody can become a pornographer, and anybody can make a living creating niche porn content, which people still pay for because it's not as ubiquitous. It's empowered performers, people who are sex workers. These are marginalized people. It has empowered them to take control over productions and have a great longevity that they wouldn't have otherwise had, because due to either aging out or simply getting exhausted with it, you can only perform for so many years. And by shifting production into the hands of the performers, we've given them a new way to sustain themselves and also sustain the industry. What my company is doing is we are taking our camera and our stitching software, and we're creating a marketplace where performers can produce their own pre-recorded content, and they can then sell this in this marketplace, which mirrors the shift in power that we saw in regular traditional porn, in that right now, all of the VR porn is being made by really big studios, by people who are not performers, by people who are paying the performers a day rate, and the performers are not empowered to create their own content because of the cost for getting a camera, the resources required for learning stitching. It's just a lot for them to engage in right now. So by circumventing that process and giving them an easy solution with a camera that works and stitches immediately, where they simply have to click a button and record and then upload, we're giving performers the ability to take back the power in virtual reality and, in a sense, democratizing VR porn. By making it more accessible, we're creating more jobs and more opportunity for people. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. I wanted to have some time to take questions from people because I find that some of the most insightful points that I know people are interested in come from the audience. So I'd like to invite you to ask questions. Does anybody have questions about virtual reality pornography? Yes?
So will virtual reality be the killer app will the porn will be the killer app for the virtual reality?
Will porn be the killer app for virtual reality? I think it is going to be a killer app, but I think it can't and should not be the driving aspect of virtual reality. Because if porn is the primary best application in VR, then porn will be the first thing that people think about when they see a VR headset. And then nobody wants to be seen wearing a face-mounted masturbatorium. Porn, it's something that people are not comfortable with. Sex in general is something people are not comfortable with. We see this in society. People expect porn to be sex ed. People blame porn for teaching children bad things about sex. This is because people are so uncomfortable talking about sex that they cannot fathom having that conversation with their children. And so they put the onus on porn and then get upset when children are curious about sex and then watch porn because they can't get information from the people who should be giving it to them. We don't have sexual education in schools in America the way that we do elsewhere. And so because people are so uncomfortable talking about porn and talking about sex, porn is very much in the background for most people, and I think it's going to continue to be for virtual reality. There's also this idea that porn pushes technology. We saw this with VHS versus Betamax and DVD versus Blu-ray. Porn brought about some of the first streaming video and payment processing. That is a 90s thought. Porn used to drive technology. Porn used to have a big push in tech. But this is because porn had purchasing power. Because people used to pay for porn, porn was able to drive technology in a way that it simply cannot now, until people start actively paying for porn again.
So you have mentioned that because you're part of the adult industry, somehow you were segregated to the adult industry. And I feel that that's incredibly frustrating, not just for you, but for me too. I feel that a lot of the insight that you gain from your experience doing what you do could be incredibly valuable for the entertainment industry, for the education, to how you build connections between the character, be it a real person or a virtual AI sort of driven character, and the visitor looking at experience. So what are the insights that you feel you could share with people that aren't looking into porn, but into creating whatever is the other content? I'd love to hear that.
So with the technology that we've created, there's an opportunity to connect with extreme immediacy. And like I was saying, the sex is secondary. What you can really establish is a human connection. You can put someone into a personal space, an intimate space with someone else, and you can teach them a lot about how to connect with another person. I've learned that people, once they're in this space, feel a very sudden sense of connection and attachment. So with regular chemming, once you do it for a very long time, you notice milestones in your connection with the person you're talking to. You hit these milestones incredibly rapidly in virtual reality. I had one of my cam clients in virtual reality. He had come and talked to me maybe twice before. And the third time he came to do a private chat with me in virtual reality, he was very, very sad. And he had been in this state of depression for about a week because his girlfriend had broken up with him. And at that moment, he wanted to be someplace where he felt safe, with somebody he felt understood him, and someplace where he felt at home. And for him, that was my bedroom in virtual reality, a place he had visited twice before. And I was someone he had only spoken to twice, but because of the transportative aspect of VR, this connection built incredibly quickly, and to the point where he felt closer and more connected with me than he did anybody else in his life at the time. And he felt more at home in my bedroom, where he'd never actually physically visited, than he did anywhere in his actual life, or in his home, or in his space. I'd like to talk a little bit about how I first got into VR porn. So I tried the Oculus Rift several years ago, and immediately I knew it was going to be a game changer for pornography. Whenever I try new tech, I have two big questions. How can I fuck with it, and how can people watch me fuck with it? Because this is what, you see the world through a lens of pornography when you do porn. And so I knew it was going to be amazing. It was going to be fantastic. But I didn't have the technical skill sets to create VR porn on my own. And I wasn't some big famous porn star, so I know I was going to be booked in any of the initial shoots. So if I wanted to do it, I had to make it happen for myself. I found a post on Reddit one day where someone had talked about wanting to do VR porn, but they didn't know how to get a performer to get naked for them on camera. So this was obviously a match made in heaven. I reached out to them, and within a few weeks, I was flown out to the East Coast of the United States to shoot my first virtual reality porn scene. I met the person who would later become my business partner at a train station. And when I saw him, I almost asked him for his ID because he looked like a teenager. He was literally barely legal. He was only 20 years old, and I was a little bit taken aback. But this turned out to be the VR tech genius that I was able to rally with to create the content I created. We went to his apartment to shoot, and this is not uncommon. In porn, a lot of studios don't want to let porn shoot there, so we end up using a lot of houses. There's probably about 9 or so mansions in Porn Valley where like 90% of porn is shot. If you simply start paying attention to the bathrooms in porn, you'll start to notice you're seeing a lot of the same houses. You will really get familiar with those bathrooms after a while, depending on how much porn you watch. So when he told me we were going to be shooting at his apartment, I was like, oh, okay, that's normal. When I got there, I realized what he meant was his dorm room. And this was a huge shock to his roommates, who had no idea we were going to be shooting porn that day. And we interrupted their Dungeons & Dragons game to do so, which was excellent, because then I was like, okay, at least I'm amongst my people. They were a little shocked. So we shot our first VR porn scene. And it was 3D 180, camera mounted on a wall in his dorm room. There was a commemorative plate of Lieutenant Commander Data on the wall. And I went in, and I wasn't sure what to expect, because in regular porn, there's a lot of people behind the camera. There's people lighting, there's the director, there's a makeup artist waiting off set to powder you, whatever. But as I'm sure many of you know, in VR, you can't really have a crew in the room. You have to find ways to to make do and make it look natural. So I went into the room and I was like, okay, so are you going to direct me? What do you want me to do? It was like, go get him tired. No advice, no direction, no instruction. So I kind of had to learn from the ground up. And when I approached that first scene, I approached it like it was a cam show. I talked to the camera the way that I would talk to someone who was paying me by the minute. And we ended up creating something that was absolutely mind-blowing for us at the time. Because the sense of human connection from that one video was greater than any other porn film either of us had ever seen or engaged in. He told me for the first time he felt like he was really watching a person on the video, which is a little bit troubling because what did you think you were watching before? And it kind of reflects how sometimes we subconsciously dehumanize sex workers and porn stars. And this is something that I see reflected in my life a lot. But this one scene made both of us realize that we were onto something really, really excellent. And this was going to be our future. He was studying physics at the time. And I was starting a lesbian porn company at the time. And he finished his school and went straight into porn. I ditched my production company. I abandoned it altogether to focus entirely on VR porn. It was a tough road after that, because learning the tech as you go is tough, especially when everybody is learning as they go and there are no experts to look to guide you. We made 360 3D porn, which is the most common on the market at this point, and learned a lot. My first 3D 360 pornography was some of the worst VR content I've ever seen. It was absolutely terrible, because I was approaching it through the lens of traditional film. It felt like you were like a voyeur in a room where two people were having a really intimate experience, but not in a sexy way, just in a really awkward way. Like, it felt like you were kind of just standing in a corner jerking off while two people had a really good time. And I learned, along with the rest of VR porn, that it really needs to be a first-person experience. The camera has to be another participant in the event. If you don't incorporate the camera, you are creating a very large sense of alienation in the person watching it, and it's very discomforting. So we took that into consideration, and as an industry have learned that with VR porn, the person who is the viewer's avatar, so to speak, the first person, whoever's running the camera, has to basically be entirely non-present. They are simply a body. If they make noise, if their hand, heaven forbid, their hand comes into view, it immediately breaks the immersion for the viewers, because their body is not reflected in what they're seeing. For that and a few other reasons, I don't have an avatar. I don't use any kind of physical avatar for the viewer in my cam content. When you look down, you just see a floor. This is partially because I don't want to break the immersion for people, and also because I don't want to create one general avatar. Until it is possible for us to incorporate something that is custom made to specifically reflect that person's physical identity, I don't want anything at all. I don't want someone to look down and be like, oh, cool, I'm a white guy with a strangely large dick. Because so much content is already geared towards cisgendered white men. And I don't want somebody who is a trans person, or a fat person, or an old person, or a person of color. Anybody who is not traditionally represented in this field. I don't want them to feel like this is something that's not made for me. This is another thing that is made for somebody else. I want to have a sense of inclusion in the people who participate in this on both sides of the camera. And I want to make it a safe place for everybody. There's a greater sense of safety that you feel when you're in virtual reality, because the people that are interacting with you are typically on better behavior than otherwise. And there's this sort of funness that is there in VR camming that isn't there in any other experience that I've had. Because when you're watching me on my cam in virtual reality, I am entirely dominating your attention. You're not on your phone, you're not checking your email, you're not pretending to work while your boss isn't watching. You're completely immersed in a space that I've created for your consumption, that I've decorated for your consumption, and your attention is completely on me. And knowing that the people watching me are completely engaged and engrossed makes me feel a greater responsibility to connect with them and to be entertaining and to engage them in a way that they're not otherwise engaged.
So most of the time we talk about VR porn as a default. We think about VR porn that is directed towards men. There's very little conversation going about how do we create VR porn that is for other genders, women, trans, etc. So what are the insights that you could share that we are not speaking about when creating content for these other genders?
So those are two separate questions, actually. Creating content for trans-identified people starts with changing some of the culture in porn. Porn is a great industry that I absolutely love, with a lot of habits that I absolutely hate. And one of them is this sort of dehumanizing approach to trans-bodied people. Up until a few years ago, the Transgender Adult Film Awards were titled with something that is a slur against transgender people. And there's this tendency to use words that are very, very offensive to trans people in the porn that they're in. And so if you're a trans person, you don't want to buy any porn, VR or otherwise, that uses words that dehumanizes you. So creating content for trans people begins with respecting trans people, which the adult film industry could really work on, honestly. Creating content for women is very easy, and a lot of people think that it's this very complex thing, or that women need very soft porn, or women need to have a plot, or women need to have something really gentle, or something like that. And it's absolute nonsense. Women like porn that is just as hardcore and fun as men do. The difference is women want something that is more realistic. Women know how women's bodies work. So if I see a porn and the guy is nowhere near touching anything that would actually give her pleasure and she is in the throes of ecstasy, I know it's fake. And it's not sexy, it's just I'm watching a woman feel no pleasure and faking it for the sake of a man. And that's not like fun at all. That's really just reflective on patriarchy in society, and that's just not my fetish. So creating good content for women starts by creating realistic content for them. A lot of VR porn is using a first-person experience, and when you do that, you completely shut out the experience for anybody who isn't reflected in that body. So I think making it possible to customize the body that you see in VR might help, or just creating more content with people of all different body types and genders. And I think that goes for anybody in virtual reality porn. When they look down, they want to feel like they're represented. They want to feel like something out there is making them. And yeah, just making stuff that doesn't suck. Just don't make shitty porn, and women will enjoy it.
Another question. How far are you looking into the future? So we know that interactivity is coming, we know that haptics are coming. So what is that you're looking forward to? And if you could speak to the Hall of Developers, what would you like them to focus on in terms of technology that you feel could improve what you are creating?
Haptics are going to change everything in this industry. People love to talk about teledildonics, and teledildonics are very cool. It's I'm just gonna mansplain it for you. It's a reciprocal device where the person on camera has like a dildo device, and the person at home has a stroker that they put on their penis, and it reciprocates the sense of pressure that is placed on the dildo. So it's a pressure-based experience, but it's not haptic. And haptic is going to make it so much more immersive and so much more engaging for people. And it's going to make it so that it doesn't matter if you have a penis or not, you can still have this fourth aspect of the experience, this fourth dimension of experience. There's also a patent on teledildonics, which has prohibited some of the development. A few years ago, there were a lot of companies that were starting to make teledildonic devices, and they were all sued and shut down because of the person who owns the patent. And I actually got a chance to talk to this person directly. And basically, he doesn't want the market to be flooded with bad devices, because And this is something that I think is reflected in porn. If somebody tries something for the first time and they try the worst possible version of it, they're going to judge the entire experience by that one attempt at exploring the medium. This is also why I think it's important to democratize VR porn, but I think it's important to do it with good technology and with well done stitching. Because if you make shitty porn in virtual reality, people are going to try it and think this represents all of virtual reality or all of VR porn, and they're never going to want to try it again. Especially if they're trying it on a device that isn't optimal. But for porn tech, for sex tech, I want devices that will make the user feel more like they are actually in the space they're seeing. More like when they reach out, they can actually touch the person in front of them. I want the sensation of skin and moisture. That is going to change the entire industry.
Anybody in the public has questions?
So what about monetization? What's your current business model and your idea about future business models?
Our business model is a freemium model, so you can try it for free. You can try VR for free, VR lifetimes, and it's a tip-based economy. In the future, we are going to expand the private chat options and make it so that you can go into a private chat with a performer and actually speak and she'll hear your voice immediately. And that is going to be a premium experience, so that'll be a very expensive 5-minute model. And then creating the pre-recorded content where performers can, when they're not online, I can go to her profile and still feel like I'm in virtual reality with her, even though it's pre-recorded. And I think that creating that marketplace where performers can be available to their fans 24 hours a day in some sense is going to bring them back a lot. And I think that that's going to bring people more into VR porn. They'll feel a sense of connection to this one person rather than watching that one person in a few videos wherever they can find them. They'll be able to connect with that person and feel a much stronger connection with them because they'll be able to enter that bedroom that they're in or whatever space they're in any time of day.
Anybody else has questions?
I think I have the same question as Monica asked earlier. It's in what ways does it change you to those kind of experiences?
In what ways has doing this changed me?
Yeah.
Virtual reality or porn in general?
No, this experience of inviting people into the sense.
It's made me a lot more conscious about my housekeeping. Doing this has given me a lot of opportunity to connect with other performers and give them opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. Creating that for people in the struggling industry is a very empowering thing. Giving women greater access to money and to work is awesome. I've been to third world countries where this is what these women are doing because it's the best choice for them, they absolutely love it, but it's hard for them to stay ahead of the game, basically. And so by giving them this, they get a leg up that they wouldn't otherwise have. It boosts them, and it's absolutely improved the way that they can support their families because they're making more money doing it, and they're getting more clients as a result. It's made me a lot more entrepreneurial and a lot more worldly because I come out here to talk a lot. But mostly, I've become kind of the voice of the porn VR industry. And it's helped me to connect with other people in the tech and sex space and get a sense of what we can do to improve our industry in general. This is a new place. This VR is a whole new venture for everybody. And we have the opportunity to change the way that porn has sort of failed people in the past. There's, like I was saying, with trans issues, there's a lot of ways where the porn that you consume dehumanizes people in it by using slurs. There's a lot of racial discrimination and really shitty racist scenarios in porn, which we can make the choice to avoid or to approach with more thought and consideration. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Ela.